What's going on, everybody? Bobby Fi here. I don't think Sheets is going to be joining us because he's in the Hamptons and he's just moving in there. Let's get after it tonight. I am doing a very different thing than what I usually do. I'm not playing a ton of lineups, but I am basically going to have the Blue Jays like exposure in every single one of them. I think I have one lineup with one Blue Jay. I think everything else has at least two, usually four or five. I'm just going to hammer when I feel like it's the best spot, and I actually like the Blue Jays the best of any team on this slate. I also think because there's a Coors game, you're going to get a little bit lower ownership than you would in this spot normally. Still going to have some ownership, don't get me wrong. And I'm mixing them around with a lot of Dodgers. For those of you in the premium, that's you've seen my builds. That's sort of where I'm headed. I'd like to see the Dodgers starting lineup. I might change some things because I do like the Dodgers quite a bit. And I like the other team I'm stacking is the Rockies. I think Colorado ends up on the low end of these two teams. I actually would make a wager here. I like the Rockies to win this game. I like the Rockies to outscore the Angels, obviously. And I think that's a good stance to take. And I do have some Angels as like one-offs and pieces for cheap guys. Like, I don't know. Let's see. I've got Kevin Padlo in a couple lineups. I've got Chad Wallach in a couple lineups. I've got Luis Rengifo in a couple lineups. But I'm not trying to get any Angels exposure. Just when I needed a cheap bat in a certain spot, I went with the guys from that game. Something other people don't like to do very much. I have no problem with it. And then at pitching on DraftKings, I have Musgrove, Bassett, and Bieber as the priorities with Sheehan and Dunning as the cheapos that I'm using. Not really taking much variance on that. I do, for what it's worth, like on FanDuel, I think my favorite is probably Bieber, because I think that even with the strikeouts down, the quality starts have been there. I still think he's going to pick the strikeouts up at some point. And but even with the strikeouts down, this guy is Mr. Quality Start. He's going to go out there and he can throw 110 pitches. So I'm going to take Bieber as my guy on the FanDuel. And over there, I've got basically a Dodgers and Blue Jays stack is where I'm at. There we go. We're already all right. Well, we're in the same boat. And I don't usually like on these giant slates to make my main team the double-digit own, but because they're going to be the low double digits for the most part, and because there's a couple of single-digit guys I can play from them in every lineup, I think that's the route I'm going to take with my Blue Jays stacks. I also think the Dodgers are just going to be very overlooked tonight, and I think this is a pretty good spot for them. Oh, the Dodger lineup just came out. Here we go. Betts, Freeman, Smith, Martinez, Peralta, Vargas, Outman, Rojas. And I didn't even get who the 9-hitter was because it didn't show on my phone. So that means I had some speculative plays on whether or not they would play Jason Hayward tonight. I didn't think they would, but just in case, I threw him in some because he's so cheap. Michael Busch is in the 9 hole. I just mentioned I'm getting to some Emmett Sheehan on DK. I think it's a reasonably good play, actually. I like the idea of taking these guys. Haven't been seen that much before. Houston hasn't been nearly as good offensively as I think people think they have. They're really not that great. Not nearly as good. Well, they haven't been great, I should say. So I like the idea of taking some Sheehan as a cheapo along with a little bit of Dunning. The early slate, I don't understand what the question is. Nobody's playing the 340. I'm not the 20-minute turbo slate. No, I didn't go over that because I literally haven't looked at it yet. So there's projections up for it, but I don't have any interest in going over the 4-gamer that is weather issue. There's a little bit of, actually, there's only really weather in the one game, but I just haven't looked at that. I'm not playing that slate. No, you didn't miss anything, Remo. I think Bello is okay to take a shot on because the White Sox have struggled. They've been a little bit better lately for what it's worth. But I think it's definitely okay to take a shot on Bello or Giolito for that matter. I think they're both reasonable plays that are going to be overlooked. I just didn't get to enough lineups to where I played them. But I'm totally fine with taking a long shot play like that when the guys at the top, we don't feel like necessarily great about them putting up giant numbers. These guys, like Musgrove as the most popular pitcher, he doesn't put up the huge games very often. Bassett does have the giant ceiling. I'll give him that. And Logan Webb, I don't like this matchup for the ceiling. I do think there's a chance for Bieber, but I think it's not as great. And then I think you get into the Bello stuff, and all these guys. I like the Bello. I like the Sheehan. No one's going to play Giolito, Dane Dunning. Those are the sort of the guys I'm looking at. I'm not really getting too creative. Yeah, you could play some Astros. That's fine. I have zero interest in doing that whatsoever. I don't. It's a stadium downgrade for the Astros. There's really nothing to make the Astros appealing to me. Could it happen? Sure. The Dodgers don't generally give up like a million runs at home outside of that one game with the Giants where they give 19. But yeah, if you want to play them, there's certainly nothing wrong with it. Yainer Diaz, assuming that he bats cleanup, is already like a plug-and-play type of play. But I'm certainly not stacking any Astros. No problem if you want to. I just think there's too many other good opportunities on this slate that I don't need to play underperforming Astros team with limited power. Yeah, no Ruiz for Oakland does help Bassett. Yeah, and you've got Kemp leading off, who does know. Like, these guys do know. They know him. They played with him for years. Some of them. Some of these guys are too young to play with him for years. But it is kind of a watered down looking A's lineup, which I do think helps Bassett. Bassett will be in my biggest buy-in on DraftKings, and I still like Bieber as my play on FanDuel, especially as I think he'll be lower owned than the Musgrove Bassett. So that's partly what I'm thinking. In terms of actual position by position, what I'm doing, like I have Danny Jansen as my most popular catcher with Diaz, Will Smith, and Elias Diaz, Yainer Diaz, and Will Smith as my three others. First base, Vlad Guerrero. You could play Brandon Belt in the outfield, so I'll do that mostly. Padlo is another one you could use. Freddie Freeman, those would be my favorites. Second base, Rengifo, Tony Kemp. Looking for value there. Whit Merrifield in the stacks of Toronto, but not all of them. Some of them without Whit. And Miguel Vargas for the Dodgers. Let me just double check the Dodgers lineup because Vargas is hitting 6th. Okay, no problem with that. So it's and by the way, a lot of these, like, I think that on FanDuel that I do think that Toronto is going to be incredibly popular. And I don't think they're going to be nearly as popular as I don't think they're going to be as popular as projected on DraftKings. All right, third base, Matt Chapman's my number 1, Ryan McMahon's my number 2, and my number 3 is Max Muncy. Shortstop, assuming that Muncy, of course. Muncy is. Oh wait, hold on, Muncy is out of the lineup. I misread the lineup. Oh, okay, I'm gonna have to make some changes because They did say that they expected Muncy back for the weekend. I didn't see an updated thing, so I'm guessing that he's just not going to be. So that's going to change my thinking a little bit here. That's a little bit of a bummer, and it's a little knock to the Dodgers stack because that's the play I really wanted to make there. Anyway, all right. Moving on to positions. So forget Muncy. Shortstop, Mookie, Bichette are basically the guys I'm using. Like, there's nobody, everybody else, you can make a lot of other cases for guys. Those are my 2 favorites. I'm going to play them in most of my lineups. In the outfield, Varsho, Belt, Gavin Sheets for value, Profar, Nolan Jones, Ohtani. I disagree. I understand Sheets thinking about not playing Ohtani because of one-off and people saying how bad those plays are. I totally disagree with guys who are just immense power guys. But I actually don't have him as much as a one-off. I have Ohtani in a 4-3-1. It's a Colorado 4, 3 Angels 1. That's my most Angels in any of my lineups. And other than that, I really only have one Angel in basically any other lineup. I'm going to have to do some major reshuffling because I've got Jason Hayward and Max Muncy, who I was speculating on, and basically all my lineups have a guy who's not playing yet. What's up to my man MJ? Good to see you in here, guys. Pop in your questions and thoughts because I don't think I don't have a whole lot else to go over. The other teams that I considered, I had at Toronto, the Dodgers, Colorado, San Francisco, San Diego, and then a mini Oakland stack as for value. Those are my priorities. They were my priorities all day, and they still are. So that's where I'm at today. I don't think that we need to. I am not going to deviate. And look, if it happens to be a night where the Dodgers and Blue Jays don't hit, I'm going to lose money. Simple as that. If they go nuts, it's going to be very hard for me not to make money because I will have them wrapped every single which way. So that's the approach I'm taking today. And again, not totally fading Coors, but there's not one Coors player I have half as much ownership as they're going to be owned. So and no stacks, of course. Yeah, well, you could sub. I mean, by the way, it's not that I dislike Manny. The only thing Manny has to deal with in the Padres, why I have them a little lower, they would be my team tonight, but 64 degrees of 10-mile-an-hour winds blowing directly in against to an all, basically an all righty offense with the exception of Cronenworth, Grisham, and Soto. And they're going to be hitting right into that wind. So it's just hard for the power upside to get there, especially in a stadium that already suppresses power to a certain extent. When it's nice and warm out, it's good for righties there. When it's cold and the wind's blowing in, it's just really hard to get the ball out of there. So I'm not going to be stacking the Padres, even though I don't blame you if you want to. And I do think Manny Machado is a very, very reasonable play. Let's just see It is interesting because it does feel like the ownership on San Diego should be a lot higher than it is. So maybe that's one thing you could do. Is that I do think that it's a good enough spot to where you could take a shot. Like, one thing is, if Tatis gets on, he's going to steal a base no matter what, which you probably get on against a guy like Corbin. Kim will probably do the same as well. That's pretty much the main guys you have to worry about, though, running. You could get one from some of these other guys just because it's Corbin, but most likely those are the two guys you would think would get the bags. I just think that the hitting conditions are just not good, and for whatever reason, Corbin has found a little bit of something to where he's just not getting rocked as much. The home runs are down, the walks are bad still, but down from last year. And it's not like he's been good. It's just that he's not getting just shellacked the same way he used to. He's in all of his last starts. Here's his earned runs allowed, and he pitches deep into games even when he gets roughed up. 4 earned runs, 2, 3, 3, 6, 2, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3. That's not that appealing to stack against, especially in 64-degree weather with 10-mile-an-hour winds blowing directly back at your hitters that you're facing. So that's why I'm not doing the Padres, but I do think that at the ownership, I think you probably, if you're like max entering at all, I would make sure to be over the field on the Padres. I'm just not playing enough lineups to get to them, and I don't like them as a full 5-man. If it was me, I would probably play Soto, Tatis, Kim, or something as a 3-man or something like that to go with maybe you'd have to find a way of stacking some other team cheaper to get it there. All right. Keep popping in questions or thoughts. I'm happy to answer anything. Just need to go change my lineup, so I don't want to forget about that. Really tilting day of golf for me. I think that all of my main, not all of them, but a huge amount of my ownership somehow ended up exactly on the cut line, and that's very, very frustrating. Especially JT Poston, who was 1% owned, who was 4 under day one, and then just bogey 18 to miss the cut. So little golf tilt going on here. And I do have Chez Reavie in like 18% of lineups, and he's 13 under, and 2 back of McCarthy and Keegan, who I was also overweight on. So just didn't work out. I also have Eric Cole 15%. So it was right there. So just kind of a little irritating golf day for me. Good luck to Kenny Hyder. He's got some beauty lineups that he showed me. So good luck to him in the golf tournament. Maybe he can make another run at winning one of the big ones. I don't understand what that question means. What does that mean? What stack type? Oh, you mean like how many players? It depends on the slate. It's always going to be the question. The general rule is 5-2-1, 5-1-1 if they're all 5-1-1-1 if they're all solid, or 5-3. That's the general rule you'll hear. I think it's totally fine to play 4-2-2s, 4-3-1s, and 4-4s. I do that a little more often than most people. Although the top players have gotten around to, I've seen a lot more 4-4s from a lot of winning lineups from top players. But it really depends on the slate. For me, there's no automatic rule where I'm just always stacking 5. But that is the general baseline where you should be looking to go. It does differentiate you in single entries and smaller field stuff if you can just play like a 4-3-1. And even in the large field stuff, it really differentiates you. But it makes more sense if you're going to be playing like a ton of entries to just sort of go for the hammer shot, especially on the bigger slates. On smaller slates is generally when you would want to look, maybe look at some 3-3-2s, 4-2-2s, stuff like that. Interest in Houston, if you want to do it, I don't have any interest in them. I think there's we've got 22 teams we could choose from. Houston has, I believe, the 4th lowest run total, 5th lowest run total, maybe 4th or 5th lowest run total. And I just pulling up some stats just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about with Houston. What are they hitting this year versus right-handed pitching? The Astros, let me just make sure. Yeah, they're hitting 240, so they're below average against right-handed pitching. They don't strike out a ton. Their on-base percentage is terrible at 312, which is also, let's just see where that lands them. The 10th worst in baseball. The slugging percentage for the Astros against righties. Let's see where they're at. Oops, that's the wrong way. Slugging percentage is, let's just do OPS instead because that's more important. Their OPS, you get a little better with the OPS. So they've had a little bit of power, but remember those numbers are with Framber Valdez. I'm sorry, not with Framber Valdez, with the big boy, their best hitter, who's not available, obviously, and won't be for a little while. So this is the Houston, not the Houston A lineup, and I like Sheehan, so I'm not playing Houston. But I totally am fine. It's a day where I would be totally fine if that's the route you wanted to take. I know that people like to just do that. They just see the young guy and they want to stack against him. I don't personally feel that way. Sorry about that. Anyway, yeah. So Houston is, the pricing is, everybody looks too cheap on FanDuel. It's really easy to play. The Toronto especially is the one that looks the most ridiculous with their pricing. And it's not totally unfounded. I mean, we've had a really bad year from Vlad Guerrero so far. I'm just going to bet on long-term results and that he's going to find his way and hit like 25 home runs in the second half of the year or something like that. I just think that's going to happen. Anyway. All right. Anything else, guys? Dropping any questions, any thoughts? Happy to go through it. And as I mentioned earlier, I just want to touch on something. Sheets, again, huge congratulations for a great win yesterday. I just want to point out, people keep asking about, hey, can you show us your thing and show us this and all that stuff. Sheets shows every single thing he does. I know I mentioned this on the morning video. There is nobody in all of DFS who goes through process more than Sheets does. He actually showed the entire build that he used to create his 40 lineups and did it exactly on air. So it was right there. There's nothing else he could do than what he did, and nobody else is willing to go that far. And then Sheets and our whole thing is transparency. So I show my builds. Sheets shows his process, and so that's the best we can do. And I think it's a pretty great offering. When you factor in Goldie's, the only aggregate projections across the industry are Goldie, and I think that's really, really amazing to take advantage of, along with the SaberSim option as well as Sheets projection. So I feel like we have a lot to offer, and Sheets does do his damnedest to really go through his process. Our goal is to try and make you guys better, not just try and make you win today. It's to try and make people better in the long run. And, look, baseball is rough. Like Sheets was saying, he said he had like one winning day or something, or two winning days in like a month. And I had a time like that. Like even recently I've been having a time like that a little bit. I did triple my money yesterday, but before that it had been like solid, like 10 days with one win. And that's just what baseball is. You're just gonna have to deal with high variance, and you're supposed to take weird stances, and that's also going to lead to more variance. But that's the way you have to play, in my opinion, to have a consistent way of winning. Anybody who's playing, if you're playing GPPs every day and you're profiting every day, you're probably doing something wrong, and you're probably making a very small profit. Now, there's a few exceptions of where guys who are max entering will have more winning days than not, but it's very rare. Almost everybody I've worked with, and it's pretty much everybody in this industry, you're going to lose most of the time at baseball. It's when you win, how can you take best advantage of it? It's usually minimalizing the number of stacks you play, and trying to really hone in on the ones you love. And that's I think the best you can do, especially on the small slates. You just want to get really weird with it because it's baseball. Ownership means everything. On the big slates, it's pretty simple. If there's teams that are 20+% owned as a stack, I'm just never going to be this guy who's fully stacking that team. It's never going to happen. Appreciate that, Clay. And also, we will do another. We can do another go through process. Lineup building thing / coaching session with Sheets, or with Sheets and I, or with hopefully we can get Rhodey in for one of them this year. But I would love to get back to that because I think it's a really helpful tool in getting better at that. Favorite Dodgers bats? It's always going to be It's always going to be Mookie and Freeman, but they're expensive. I mean, obviously, it's Mookie, Freeman, Will Smith, and JD. Those are the 4 favorites, but it's hard to get those guys in. From the other guys, I think that Vargas ahead of Peralta, Outman ahead of Bush and Rojas, Bush ahead of Rojas. That's pretty much what I'd go. Yeah, exactly, Phil. You don't want to be eating baseball chalk. Now, on the other hand, with pitching, if you like a situation, you completely eat the pitching chalk. Don't ever worry about. I don't worry about ownership in pitching. Every now and then, I find a different angle if I think something's too chalky. But for the most part, you don't need to worry about as much with pitching because you can always get different with your bats. And there's going to be a 2,500 guy who's going to hit 2 home runs or have a home run and a stolen base and 2 walks and 3 runs scored or something, Anyway, guys, I appreciate you all tuning in. I'm going to get back to my build just so I can clean them up and make sure that I don't have anybody who's not playing because that's a very bad thing. I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. I am not going to be around much this weekend, but I wish you luck, and we'll pick things back up on Monday. And if there's any questions or anything, of course, even with the weekend, though, feel free to hit me up. And if I do end up having a chance or time to play or anything, of course, I'll let you guys know and jump on with you. Thanks so much for everything, guys. Please hit the like before you get out of here, and let's make some money tonight. Good luck, everybody.